A hush of winter hung in the air. The night compassion changed everything. She offered kindness to a stranger the world had forgotten, unaware that behind the tattered coat lived a powerful man hiding from the ruins of his own choices. Their brief encounter should have ended there, but fate, restless and unforgiving, had already set its trap, one that would expose lies, awaken longing, and force a heart shaped by duty to confront an impossible desire. Before we begin, tell me, from where in the world are you listening? And what do you love most about period romances? The snow fell in thick, relentless sheets over the cobblestone streets of New York City, blanketing the Gilded Age metropolis in a hush that belied its usual clamor. It was Christmas Eve, 1889, and the air carried the sharp bite of winter, mingled with the faint scent of roasting chestnuts from street vendors who braved the cold. Olivia Whittaker, a young woman of 24 with porcelain skin and auburn hair pinned neatly beneath a velvet bonnet, hurried along Fifth Avenue. Her woolen coat, modest yet finely stitched, fluttered against her skirts as she clutched a small parcel wrapped in brown paper, a gift for the orphans at the mission house. Olivia's life was one of quiet contradictions. Born to a family of modest means in Brooklyn, she had risen through sheer determination to become a seamstress for the elite, mending the silks and satins of Manhattan's wealthiest women. Her days were filled with the prick of needles and the whisper of gossip from ladies who treated her as invisible. Yet beneath her composed exterior burned a fierce compassion, forged from the loss of her own parents to the cholera outbreak years earlier. She volunteered at the mission whenever she could, believing that true wealth lay not in gold, but in kindness. Tonight, the mission hall glowed with lantern light, its wooden beams sagging under the weight of garlands and holly. Inside, the air was warm with the aroma of turkey and mince pies, donated by sympathetic merchants. Olivia arrived just as the doors opened to the line of the destitute, factory workers laid off by the panic of '87, immigrants huddled against the chill, and children with hollow cheeks and threadbare coats. She helped serve the meal, her gloved hands ladling stew into battered tin bowls, her smile a beacon in the dim room. Among the guests was a man who caught her eye immediately. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his frame hidden beneath layers of ragged wool and a threadbare scarf that obscured half his face. His boots were caked in mud, and his hands, when he accepted the bowl, trembled slightly, not from cold alone, but from something deeper, a weariness that spoke of unseen burdens. His eyes, though, were sharp, a piercing blue that seemed out of place amid the despair. He murmured a quiet, "Thank you, miss," his voice low and refined, carrying a hint of an education that didn't match his appearance. Olivia paused, struck by the incongruity. In a city where fortunes rose and fell like the tides, appearances could deceive. She watched as he took a seat at a long table, eating slowly, his gaze drifting to the flickering candles on the mantel. The other volunteers bustled about, but she felt drawn to him, as if an invisible thread pulled her closer. "Would you like some bread?" she asked, sliding onto the bench across from him. He looked up, surprise flickering in those blue eyes. "That would be kind," he replied, his tone measured. Up close, she noticed the faint lines etched around his mouth, the shadow of a beard that suggested days without a proper shave. They spoke little at first, about the weather, the harsh winter, the mission's efforts. But as the evening wore on, with carols sung by a children's choir and the crackle of the hearth, he let slip fragments of a story. "Lost everything in the crash," he said softly, staring into his bowl. "A man can fall far when the world turns." Olivia's heart ached. She knew that pain intimately. Her father's tailoring shop shuttered, her mother gone too soon. "The world is cruel," she said, "but Christmas reminds us there's light even in the dark. She pressed a small loaf into his hand, her fingers brushing his. In that touch, something electric passed between them, a spark of connection amid the strangers. As the night deepened, the hall emptied, leaving only the echoes of laughter and the dying embers. Olivia lingered, helping to clear the tables. When she realized the man hadn't left, he stood by the door, adjusting his scarf, his posture straightening as if shedding a weight. "Miss Whittaker," he said, using her name from the volunteer roster she'd mentioned earlier. "Your kindness. It's rarer than you know." She smiled, waving it off. "Just doing what's right." He nodded, stepping into the snow-swept night. But as he vanished into the flurry, Olivia felt a pang, an inexplicable sense that their paths had crossed for a reason. Little did she know, that beggar at the Christmas table was no ordinary soul. He was Ethan Caldwell, the enigmatic magnate whose iron empire spanned railroads and steel mills, worth millions, disguised to test the hearts of a city obsessed with wealth. And in helping him, Olivia had unwittingly stepped into a world that would upend her own. The revelation would come later, shattering illusions and igniting a romance forged in deception and destiny. But that Christmas Eve, as she locked the mission door and trudged home through the storm, her thoughts lingered on those blue eyes, wondering if fate had just whispered her name. If this tale of hidden fortunes and heartfelt connections has you hooked, hit that like button if you're enjoying it so far. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more gripping stories from the Gilded Age. Comment below with your city and country so we can see where you're watching from. The days following Christmas blurred into a crisp January routine for Olivia Whittaker, the city awakening from its holiday slumber with the relentless grind of the Gilded Age machine. New York pulsed with energy, horse-drawn carriages clattering over frozen ruts, newsboys hawking headlines about robber barons and labor strikes, the distant clang of steel girders rising for yet another skyscraper. Olivia's world, though, remained tethered to the familiar rhythms of Brooklyn, where brownstones huddled against the wind like steadfast guardians. She rose before dawn each morning in the narrow boarding house she shared with 3 other seamstresses, the room a cozy clutter of fabric bolts and thimbles scattered on oak dressers. At 24, Olivia carried herself with the poise of someone twice her age, her auburn hair twisted into a simple chignon that accentuated her clear hazel eyes and the faint freckles dusting her nose. Her wardrobe reflected her station, a high-necked blouse of crisp cotton, tucked into a wool skirt that skimmed her ankles. Practical for the long hours bent over her sewing machine, no frills for her, just a modest cameo brooch at her throat, a keepsake from her late mother. Its pearl surface cool against her skin. Breakfast was hasty, a slice of rye bread and weak tea shared in the landlady's kitchen, where the women exchanged snippets of gossip over the steam rising from their cups. "Heard the Vanderbilts threw a ball that cost a fortune," murmured Sarah, the eldest boarder, her fingers twisting a napkin. "Silks from Paris, they say. We'd mend 'em for pennies." Olivia nodded absently, her mind drifting to the mission hall and that enigmatic stranger from Christmas Eve. His refined voice haunted her, a puzzle amid the city's facades. But duty called. By 8, she boarded the ferry across the East River, the water churning grey beneath the pilings, gulls wheeling overhead with sharp cries. Manhattan loomed, its spires piercing the low clouds, a testament to the era's boundless ambition and its cruelties. Her workplace was a townhouse on Madison Avenue, home to Mrs. Eleanor Hargrove, a widow of impeccable lineage whose husband had made his mark in shipping before the grave claimed him. The Hargrove residence gleamed with polished mahogany and gaslit chandeliers, its parlours filled with the scent of beeswax and fresh orchids imported from hothouses. Olivia entered through the servant's door, her boots leaving faint tracks on the tiled floor that she quickly wiped away. Etiquette demanded invisibility. She was to mend and vanish, her presence acknowledged only by a curt nod from the housekeeper. Inside, the hierarchy unfolded like a well-rehearsed play. Mrs. Hargrove, in her 50s, with a bosom like a galleon and skirts of heavy brocade that rustled with authority, held court in the drawing-room. Her daughters, Beatrice and Lydia, 20 and 18 respectively, fluttered about in bustled gowns of pale silk, their laughter tinkling like silver spoons. They were the epitome of upper-class refinement, gloved hands, corseted waists, and conversations laced with French phrases and veiled snobberies. "Olivia, dear, the hem on this walking dress, it's simply dreadful after the snow," Beatrice complained that morning, extending a mud-splashed garment without meeting her eyes. Olivia knelt by the hearth, needle flashing in the firelight, her stitches precise and invisible, much like her own aspirations. As she worked, fragments of their world seeped in. The Hargroves embodied the era's social codes, calls on calling cards delivered by liveried footmen, afternoons at teas where alliances were forged over cucumber sandwiches, evenings at the opera where fortunes were whispered behind fans. Olivia listened, her head bowed, absorbing the undercurrents. The Panic of '87 still lingered in tales of bankruptcies, the rising tide of immigrants flooding tenements, the invisible lines that separated the haves from the have-nots. Her own family ties anchored her. Letters from Aunt Clara in the countryside arrived weekly, filled with news of cousins and the farm's meagre yields. Clara had raised her after the cholera, instilling values of resilience and charity. "Kindness is the thread that binds us," she'd say. Olivia wrote back faithfully, enclosing a few dollars from her wages, her script neat on the stationery bought from a 5 Points peddler. Yet, beneath the routine stirred a quiet unrest. At lunch, cold meats and apple in the cramped kitchen with the maids, whispers circulated. "That mission of yours, Olivia, it's drawing eyes," said cook, a stout Irish woman named Fiona. "Some fine folk don't like mixing with the rabble. Word is, a gentleman's been asking after volunteers." Olivia frowned, buttering her bread. "Asking? Who?" Fiona shrugged, eyes darting. "Dunno, but in this city, questions mean trouble." The afternoon dragged. Olivia repairing a lace shawl while the sisters practiced piano in the adjacent room, Chopin's notes drifting like smoke. She envied their ease, the way doors opened for them while hers remained half shut. Still, her compassion burned bright. Evenings found her at the mission again, sorting donations under lantern glow, the air thick with coal dust and hope. That night, as snow flurries danced outside her boarding house window, a knock echoed at the door, unusual after curfew. The landlady handed her a sealed envelope, its wax stamped with an unfamiliar crest, a stylized eagle clutching rails. No return address. Olivia's pulse quickened as she broke the seal in her room, the paper crisp beneath her fingers. The note was brief, penned in elegant script. "Your generosity at Christmas lingers in memory. A favor returned, perhaps. Meet at the Battery Park bench, noon tomorrow. Discretion advised. A grateful soul." Her heart raced. Who could it be? The refined beggar, or something more sinister, a trap woven from the city's shadows? As she folded the paper, a chill settled, not from the draft, but from the sense that her quiet life teetered on an unseen edge. The winter sun hung low over Battery Park, casting long shadows across the frozen paths where couples strolled arm in arm, their breath fogging the air like secrets unspoken. It was the second day of January, 1890, and New York harbor glittered with ice floes bobbing against the piers. Olivia Whittaker arrived early, her heart pounding beneath her woolen cloak, the mysterious note clutched in her gloved hand like a talisman. She had debated all night whether to come, curiosity warring with caution in her modest boarding-house room, where the gas lamp flickered shadows on the walls. What if it was a jest, or worse, a ploy by some unscrupulous soul? Yet the refined script tugged at her, Echoing the voice of that Christmas stranger, she settled on a wrought-iron bench facing the water, the cold seeping through her skirts despite the layers of petticoats. Ladies of her station didn't venture alone to such public spots without chaperone, but the note's plea for discretion left no room for that. Around her, the park buzzed with restrained energy. Nursemaids pushing perambulators, gentlemen in fur-collared overcoats discussing stocks, the distant cry of a ferry horn slicing the chill. Olivia smoothed her bonnet, her auburn curls escaping in wisps, and scanned the faces. None seemed familiar until a figure approached from the tree line. Tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored greatcoat of charcoal wool, a silk top hat tilted just so. No rags now, but those piercing blue eyes she would know anywhere. "Miss Whittaker," he said, removing his hat with a graceful incline. His voice, once muffled by scarves, rang clear and commanding, laced with the polish of boardrooms rather than back alleys. "Thank you for coming. I feared you might not." She rose, cheeks flushing not just from the wind. You're the man from the mission, but this," she gestured to his finery, the gold watch chain glinting at his vest. "Who are you, really?" He smiled faintly, a curve that softened the hard lines of his jaw, shadowed by a neatly trimmed beard. "Ethan Caldwell, at your service." The name landed like a thunderclap. Whispers of Caldwell echoed through the city. The railroad kingpin, whose lines snaked across the continent, whose steel mills belched smoke over Pittsburgh, amassing a fortune that rivaled the Astors. Yet here he stood, no beggar, but a titan in disguise. Olivia's mind reeled. "Why the deception? At Christmas you let me believe—" "A test," he admitted, gesturing for her to sit as he joined her, maintaining a proper distance. "This city devours the weak, Miss Whittaker. Wealth blinds people to truth. I wander its underbelly to see who still possesses a heart untainted by gold. Yours shone brightest that night." Flattery mingled with unease in her chest. She had served him stew from a tin ladle, shared bread from her own hand, all while he played the pauper. "And now? What do you want from me?" Ethan's gaze drifted to the harbor, where ships unloaded crates stamped with his company's eagle crest. "A proposition. My late mother founded a charitable foundation for orphans and widows, much like your mission. But scandals plague it. Embezzlement by a trusted advisor, whispers of mismanagement that could ruin its name. I need someone above reproach to oversee the reforms, someone with your compassion and discretion." Her breath caught. To helm such an endeavor. It meant stepping from the shadows of sewing rooms into the glare of high society, rubbing shoulders with the elite who viewed her kind as mere help. "Me? I'm a seamstress, Mr. Caldwell. No pedigree, no connections. The ladies I mend for would laugh, or worse. Precisely why you," he pressed, his tone urgent yet gentle. "The board demands a figurehead of impeccable morals, not another social climber. Refuse, and the foundation crumbles, leaving hundreds like those at your mission to the streets. Accept, and you'll have resources, a salary, a townhouse in Gramercy Park, protection from prying eyes." The offer dangled like a lifeline laced with thorns. Olivia thought of Aunt Clara's letters, the orphan's hollow cheeks, her own dreams stifled by needle pricks and societal walls. But hesitation gripped her. "What of the cost? My reputation. Associating with you, a man of your stature, invites gossip. And if the scandals deepen—" Ethan leaned closer, his cologne faint with sandalwood. "The rules are clear, utmost secrecy until the board votes. No public appearances without escort. Etiquette demands you navigate teas and galas as my ally. Vigilance against foes. That advisor, Reginald Thorn, schemes to seize control. He's spread calumnies already, painting the foundation as a den of thieves." Thorn, a name she'd heard in Hargrove drawing rooms, A slick financier with a mustache like a villain's, and eyes that calculated every glance, an antagonist in velvet, no doubt. Olivia's pulse raced. Concrete obstacles loomed. The Hargroves might dismiss her on rumor alone. Her boarding-house friends could shun her for uppity ambitions. The city's press, hungry for scandal, might twist her rise into something sordid. "I need time," she whispered, standing as gulls wheeled overhead. "This upends everything." Of course, Ethan rose too, his presence a steady anchor amid her storm. "But decide swiftly. Thorn moves fast. Meet me at my offices on Wall Street tomorrow at noon. Bring your answer." She nodded, turning toward the path, her skirts whispering against the frost. As she walked away, the weight of choice settled heavy. Refusal meant safety in obscurity, but acceptance, it shattered her status quo, thrusting her into a world of alliances and betrayals, with Ethan Caldwell as both savior and enigma. Little did she know, Thorn's spies already watched from the park's edge, a shadow lengthening across her path. By evening, back in Brooklyn, Olivia paced her room, the notes echo mingling with the ferry's distant moan. A knock came. Fiona, the cook from the Hargroves, bearing a sealed missive. "From the missus," she said gruffly. "Urgent." Olivia broke the wax, her hands trembling. Mrs. Hargrove's script was sharp. "Rumors reach me of your entanglements. Cease or face dismissal. Our circle tolerates no scandal." The ultimatum sealed it. No turning back now. Tomorrow she would step across the divide, altering her fate forever. The carriage rattled to a halt before the Gramercy Park townhouse, its gas lamps flickering like wary eyes in the late January dusk. Olivia Whittaker stepped down, her boots crunching on the fresh snow that dusted the iron fence square. It had been 3 days since her decision at Battery Park, and the world already felt tilted. Ethan's arrangements moved with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine, a modest salary deposited discreetly, trunks packed from her boarding house under cover of night, and now this residence, a narrow brick edifice with lace-curtained windows and a polished brass knocker shaped like a lion's head. No grand mansion, but a step up from shared rooms, its interior warmed by a crackling fire and the scent of beeswax polish. Inside, the housekeeper, Mrs. Ellis, a stern woman of 50 with iron-grey hair coiled tight, greeted her with a curtsy that bordered on perfunctory. "Mr. Caldwell's instructions, miss. Your role begins tomorrow. The ladies' auxiliary tea at the Presbyterian Chapel on Fifth Avenue. Discretion, as always." Olivia nodded, her gloved hands smoothing her new walking dress of navy wool, its high collar framing her face like a portrait. The fabric was finer than anything she'd sewn for others, but it felt like borrowed skin, stiff against her movements. That night, alone in the parlor with its velvet settee and a shelf of leather-bound volumes, Olivia unpacked the cameo brooch from her mother. She pinned it to her bodice, the pearl catching the lamplight. It grounded her amid the unfamiliar, a small anchor in the swelling tide of change. Sleep came fitfully, dreams tangled with blue eyes and shadowed figures. Morning brought a crisp clarity, the city awakening under a pale sun. Ethan arrived at 10, his brougham waiting outside like a sentinel. He looked every inch the magnate today. Black frock coat tailored to his broad shoulders, a silk cravat knotted precisely, his beard trimmed to a shadow. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm as they stepped into the carriage. No warmth in the gesture, just propriety, yet his nearness stirred that electric memory from Christmas, now layered with wariness. The chapel's auxiliary tea was a semi-public proving ground, a gathering of New York's charitable elite under the guise of piety. Women in bustled gowns of muted silks and satins milled about the vestry, their conversations a murmur of philanthropy and pedigree. Olivia entered on Ethan's arm, her heart hammering like a loom shuttle. Heads turned subtly, whispers rippling like wind through dry leaves. Who was this seamstress elevated to his side? The air hummed with judgment, the scent of chamomile and lemon wafers cloying. Mrs. Hargrove was there, of course, her brocade skirts sweeping the parquet floor like a battleship's wake. Beatrice and Lydia flanked her, fans fluttering as they appraised Olivia with cool detachment. "Miss Whittaker," Mrs. Hargrove intoned, her voice honeyed venom as she extended a gloved hand. "What a surprise! Mending hems to mending fortunes. Mr. Caldwell must be desperate for fresh embroidery in his ledgers." Laughter tinkled from the cluster, subtle humiliation, a barb wrapped in civility. Olivia's cheeks burned, but she held her chin steady, the brooch a cool weight at her throat. "Charity knows no station, ma'am," she replied evenly, her voice steady from Mission Hall resolve. "It's the orphans who benefit, not the egos." Ethan's hand tightened fractionally on her elbow, a micro-gesture of support, unseen by most, but felt like a lifeline. His eyes met hers for a beat, a shared silence conveying more than words. "You're not alone in this." Yet he said nothing aloud, bound by the etiquette that demanded he play the detached patron. Around them, the tea progressed. Porcelain cups clinking, discussions of the Foundation's woes veiled in concern. "Such scandals," clucked a matron in plum velvet. "Embezzlement. One must wonder at the oversight." From the shadows near the stained-glass window, a figure watched, Reginald Thorn, sleek in a pinstripe vest, his moustache curled like a question mark. He sipped his tea black, eyes narrowing as he noted Ethan's proximity to Olivia. No approach yet, just observation, a predator sizing up the field. Whispers of his influence slithered through the room. Thorn, the advisor turned schemer, his fingers in every pie from Wall Street to waterfront warehouses. As the gathering thinned, Olivia excused herself to the side table, pouring tea with trembling hands. A young widow, Mrs. Langford, soft-spoken with lace at her cuffs, approached hesitantly. "Your work at the mission. It's inspired many. Ignore the vipers. They're threatened by true grace." The words were a small balm, acceptance flickering amid rejection. Olivia smiled, genuine warmth breaking through. "Thank you. It's the cause that matters." Ethan joined her then, under pretense of fetching a napkin. Their fingers brushed as he handed her a fresh cup, another fleeting touch, electric and restrained. "You're holding your own," he murmured, voice low. "Thorn's here. Watch your back." The warning hung, deepening the intimacy of their alliance, a promise unspoken amid the crowd. But as they departed, the friction lingered. In the carriage, Ethan reviewed notes on the Foundation's books, his brow furrowed. "The board meets next week. Prove yourself there, and the tide turns." Olivia gazed out at the passing facades, the brooch now a symbol of her fragile ascent, consoling in its familiarity, yet marking the emotional rift widening between her old life and this new one. By evening, a folded newspaper lay on the townhouse stoop, delivered anonymously. The society page, a brief note in elegant type. "Mystery companion at auxiliary tea. Mr. Caldwell's enigmatic ally raises eyebrows amid Foundation turmoil." Gossip, seeded no doubt by Thorn's hand. Olivia's rise had drawn first blood, visible now, a stain on the social ledger that promised deeper cuts to come. As night fell, she wondered if the brooch's pearl could withstand the gathering storm. The blizzard hit without mercy that February evening, 1890, sealing New York in a white shroud that muffled the city's roar to a ghostly whisper. Olivia Whittaker stood at the frost-laced window of the Gramercy Park townhouse, watching snow devils whirl across the square like vengeful spirits. The wind howled through the eaves, rattling the panes and extinguishing all thought of venturing out. Mrs. Ellis had retired early, banking the fires and muttering about the devil's own weather, leaving Olivia alone with the storm's fury and an unexpected visitor. Ethan Caldwell had arrived just before the gale peaked, his carriage barely making it through the drifts. "Board meeting delayed," he explained, shaking snow from his greatcoat as he stepped into the parlour. His cheeks were ruddy from the cold, blue eyes sharp against the firelight. Thorn's manoeuvres, roads are impassable. I couldn't risk sending word. He glanced at the empty streets beyond. Looks like we're marooned till dawn. Olivia nodded, her pulse quickening at the intimacy of the situation. No chaperone, no escape. The storm forced them into uncharted territory. Propriety be damned. She poured mulled wine from a silver ewer, the steam rising like a veil between them. The Foundation's books. You mentioned reviewing them tonight. She handed him a glass, their fingers brushing in the dim glow of the gas lamps. The air thickened, charged with more than the scent of cloves and cinnamon. They settled by the hearth, the brooch at her throat catching the flames like a captured star. Spreadsheets and ledgers cluttered the oak table, columns of figures detailing the embezzled funds, Thorn's sleight of hand exposed in ink. Ethan pored over them, his brow furrowed, but as the hours ticked past, conversation drifted from numbers to necessity. The wind battered the house, a relentless drum that isolated them in a cocoon of warmth and shadow. You carry that brooch always, Ethan observed softly, nodding to the cameo. His voice, usually clipped with command, softened here, away from prying eyes. A talisman? Olivia touched it instinctively, the pearl smooth under her fingertip. From my mother, before the cholera took her, and father. I was 16, apprenticed already, stitching hems while they faded in a tenement fever ward. Her words tumbled out unbidden, the storm loosening tongues as it sealed doors. She described the nights of delirium, the herbal poultices that failed, the hollow ache of burying them side by side in Potter's Field. I vowed then, no one suffers alone if I can help it. The mission. It's her legacy, in a way. Ethan listened, his glass forgotten in his hand. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on his face, etching deeper the lines of a man who bore unseen scars. He set the ledger aside, leaning forward. Guilt is a heavy chain, Miss Whittaker. I know it well. A pause hung, thick as the snow outside. The panic of '87 didn't just ruin speculators. It claimed my brother, dashed against the rocks of debt. He built half my rails, poured his soul into the lines. When the crash hit, he ended it. A pistol in his study, dawn breaking over the Hudson. Olivia's breath caught. The magnate, untouchable in boardrooms, revealed raw, voice cracking on the edge of memory. I drove him to it, he continued, eyes fixed on the flames. Pushed too hard for expansion, ignored his warnings, duty to the empire. It blinds you. Since then, the disguises, the wandering. To atone, perhaps, or punish myself. The confessions stripped him bare, humanizing the Titan into a man haunted by loss. Olivia reached across the table, her hand covering his, a gesture born of empathy, not presumption. His fingers closed gently around hers, warm and steady, the touch lingering like a promise. No words passed, just the shared silence of wounds aired, trust weaving tighter in the storm's embrace. The emotional tide shifted, warmth blooming where wariness had chilled. I've seen your strength, Ethan murmured finally, his thumb tracing a light circle on her knuckles. Not just in ledgers or T's, you rebuild what breaks. Let me stand with you, as equals. She squeezed his hand, a tacit vow forming in that clasp. The fire popped, embers glowing like hope rekindled. For the first time, the foundation felt less like a burden, more like a bridge between them. Success glimpsed in unity, even as shadows loomed. Yet the night deepened, and a sharp rap echoed at the door, insistent, cutting through the gale. Mrs. Ellis shuffled in, bundled against the cold, holding a sodden envelope. Delivered by a boy on horseback, miss. Near froze, he did. No sender. Olivia broke the seal, her heart sinking as she read the elegant script by lamplight. Thorn knows of our alliance, it warned. He circles closer, a witness to your past indiscretions, the mission's charity with undesirables. Resign, or the board sees the scandal tomorrow. Your choice. The warmth evaporated, replaced by dread's icy grip. Ethan read over her shoulder, his jaw tightening. The antagonist's envoy had struck, a message that dragged them from intimacy's peak into peril's valley. As the storm raged on, Olivia wondered if their fragile trust could weather the gathering tempest. If this heartfelt connection between Olivia and Ethan has you rooting for them, hit that like button if you're enjoying the story so far. The morning after the blizzard dawned brittle and unforgiving. The snowdrifts piled high against the Gramercy Park townhouse like walls of judgment. Olivia Whittaker rose, with the sun's pale light filtering through iced panes, her body heavy from a night fractured by worry. The mulled wine's warmth had faded, leaving only the chill of Reginald Thorne's letter, a venomous missive that twisted their budding trust into a noose. She dressed quickly in a grey wool gown, its high neckline a shield against the vulnerability exposed in the storm's confession. The cameo brooch pinned at her collar felt heavier now, a relic mocking her illusions of control. Downstairs, Mrs. Ellis had stoked the kitchen fire, the air thick with the scent of boiling coffee and charred toast. Ethan had stayed the night in the guest chamber, propriety stretched thin by the gale, but unchallenged in the isolation. He joined her at the scarred oak table, his eyes shadowed, the magnate's polish cracked by fatigue. "Thorne's bluffing," he said, voice low and edged with steel as he unfolded the morning's Herald, its ink still damp. "He's always one step ahead, but we counter with facts. The board reconvenes today. We'll expose his ledgers there." Olivia nodded, stirring her cup, but doubt coiled in her gut. The letter's words burned. Resign, or the board sees the scandal. Her past at the mission, serving the destitute, mingling with undesirables, painted as impropriety in high society's lens. What if Thorne had twisted it into something sordid? She glanced at Ethan, the man whose hand had clasped hers by firelight, revealing brother's suicide and self-inflicted exile. That intimacy now felt fragile, a bridge half-burned. The carriage cut through slushy streets toward Wall Street, the city's pulse resuming with vendors shouting and horses snorting steam. Ethan's offices loomed in a granite edifice, its eagle crest glaring from the facade. Inside, the boardroom hummed with tension, polished walnut table ringed by stern faces, bankers in pinstripes, widows clutching reticules, all eyes on the empty chair at the head. Thorne arrived last, sleek as a ferret in his vested suit, moustache twitching with feigned concern. He nodded to Olivia coolly, as if she were a footnote, not the threat to his schemes. The meeting erupted without preamble. Ethan laid out the foundation's woes, missing funds traced to Thorne's investments, orphans' stipends diverted to his waterfront speculations. "This ends today," Ethan declared, slamming a sheaf of receipts on the table. Murmurs rippled. Shock, then nods of agreement. Olivia sat silent, her role advisory, but her presence a quiet testament to reform's heart. Thorne leaned back, fingers steepled, his smile a blade. "Admirable zeal, Caldwell, but purity demands scrutiny." He produced a dossier, thick as a Bible, sliding it across the polished surface. Pages fluttered open. Yellowed clippings from the mission's ledgers, witness statements from discreet sources. Olivia's name leapt out, accused of fraternizing with vagrants, siphoning donations for personal gain, even a fabricated liaison with a notorious beggar to curry favor. The room gasped, eyes turning to her like spotlights. "Lies," Olivia whispered, heat rising in her cheeks. But the damage spread like ink in water. Mrs. Langford, the widow from the tea, paled and averted her gaze. A banker cleared his throat. Miss Whittaker, this compromises the Foundation's image. We can't risk association. Ethan surged to his feet, voice thundering. Fabrications! Thorn's the thief here. Proof speaks louder than protest, Thorn interrupted silkily, waving a sworn affidavit from a former mission volunteer, bought or coerced. The board must act. I move to dissolve her involvement. Immediately. The vote came swift, a cascade of ayes born of fear and propriety. Olivia's world fractured in that instant, status plummeting from ally to pariah, isolation wrapping around her like the blizzard's shroud. She stood, skirts trembling, the brooch's pearl mocking her fall. "You won't silence the truth," she said to Thorn, voice steady despite the quake inside. But as she gathered her notes, the room's chill exiled her emotionally, allies scattering like leaves. Ethan caught her arm in the corridor, his touch urgent. "This isn't over. We'll fight. Private investigators, countersuits if needed." Yet doubt shadowed his eyes. The alliance strained by public fracture. Thorn's sabotage had struck deep, wounding reputation and project alike. The Foundation teetered, support ebbing as donors whispered of scandal. Back at the townhouse that afternoon, solitude crushed her. Mrs. Ellis served tea in silence, the housekeeper's loyalty thinning. A telegram arrived from the Hargroves. Dismissal effective. No references. Her old life shuttered, the new one crumbling. Olivia sank onto the settee, tears hot on her cheeks. The point of no return had arrived, no retreat to sewing rooms or mission anonymity. Thorn's attack demanded retaliation, but at what cost? Trust in Ethan wavered. Was his world worth this ruin? As dusk fell, another envelope slipped under the door, Thorn's seal, bold now. Withdraw fully, or the next expose names Caldwell's indiscretions too. The pistol in his brother's hand, merely the start. The ultimatum loomed, forcing separation. Ethan's empire at risk if she stayed. Heart aching, Olivia penned a note to him. "For your sake I step back, but the fight continues, alone." She sealed it, the wax dripping like blood, exiling herself emotionally into the fray. The magnate's door would close, leaving her to face the storm solo, the balance shattered beyond repair. The spring thaw came late to New York that year, 1890, melting snow into muddy rivulets that snaked through the cobblestone alleys like veins pulsing with renewal. Olivia Whittaker walked the paths of Gramercy Park alone now, her grey wool gown sodden at the hems, the cameo brooch hidden beneath her shawl like a secret shame. Days had blurred since the boardroom debacle, each one a deeper cut into her resolve. The townhouse felt like a cage, Mrs. Ellis's glances laced with pity, the Foundation's ledgers gathering dust on the parlour table. Ethan's note in reply had been brief, pained. "Your sacrifice honours us both, but Thorn will pay." No visit followed. Their separation a chasm widened by duty's cruel hand. Isolation bred clarity, though. Olivia spent mornings in the dim library, poring over the very documents that had damned her. Thorn's dossier, now in her possession after a discreet retrieval from the officers. What began as quiet scrutiny turned to revelation. Tucked within the clippings was a faded portrait, edges curled like whispers. A young Thorn, smirking beside a ledger marked with her mother's name, Whittaker Tailoring, the shop lost to cholera debts years prior. Her breath hitched. Further digging unearthed letters, yellowed correspondence from her father's solicitor, detailing how Thorn, then a minor investor, had foreclosed ruthlessly, pocketing the assets while her family crumbled. "Manipulation from the start," she murmured to the empty room, fingers tracing the ink. A hidden diary followed, slipped into the dossier by some remorseful clerk. Thorn's own scrawls boasting of culling the weak in the panic, using orphans' funds to buoy his schemes. Even the fabricated witness a paid actor from the docks. The truth unfurled like a noose tightening around the villain. Thorn hadn't just embezzled. He'd woven a web of personal vendettas. Her rise a threat to his empire of deceit. Indignation surged in Olivia's chest, hot and unyielding, a public's fury mirrored in her own. This man, with his oiled mustache and velvet lies, had orphaned her twice over, first in greed, now in sabotage. No more shadows. She would act. By afternoon, Olivia penned a letter, not to Ethan, but to the New York Times Society editor, a progressive voice amid the era's yellow journalism. Her script flowed steady, detailing the foundation's rot with proofs attached, the portrait, letters, diary excerpts. "The charitable heart of our city bleeds under false guardians," she wrote. "Let truth mend what greed has torn." Sealing it with wax, she dispatched it via a trusted messenger boy. Her first public stroke of agency. Whispers would turn to roars. Social perception would shift from pariah to avenger. Word spread like wildfire through the gaslit parlors. By evening, as Olivia ventured to a modest assembly at the Women's Reform Club, a gathering of like-minded widows and activists in a brownstone off Washington Square, the tide had begun to turn. Women in simple bustles and lace collars nodded to her now, not with scorn but curiosity. "Your mission work. It's legend," said Mrs. Langford, clasping her hand warmly. "And this Thorn, a viper in our midst." Murmurs built. Tales of his waterfront extortions, widows ruined by his loans. Olivia spoke then, voice rising clear above the clink of teacups. "We've trusted wolves in sheep's clothing too long. The foundation can heal, but only if we demand accountability." Applause rippled, a peak of hope, her initiative reframing her as leader, not victim. Allies emerged, a banker's wife promising donations, a journalist vowing coverage. Yet valleys loomed swift. As the meeting adjourned, a liveried footman delivered a sealed note, Thorn's crest glaring. "Bold words, Miss Whittaker, but meddle further and your aunt's farm burns, or perhaps Caldwell's rails derail. Accidents happen." The threat escalated, danger coiling tighter with her advance. Olivia's hands trembled, but resolve hardened. Thorn's mask cracked. The city's elite now saw his greed for what it was, indignation peaking in hushed outrage. "That cur," spat a club matron, preying on the vulnerable while sipping champagne at Delmonico's. Dusk deepened as Olivia returned home, the letter's venom fueling her steps. She penned another missive, this to Ethan. "The web unravels. Meet me at the old mission hall, midnight. Trust restored, not in passion, but in shared justice. No grand declarations, just a bridge rebuilt on firmer ground." His reply arrived by courier within the hour. "There. Guilt no longer blinds me. Your light guides." Their reapproximation was contained. A quiet clasp of hands in the lantern-lit hall later that night, his blue eyes meeting hers with renewed steadiness. "I pushed you away to protect my duty," he confessed softly, voice rough with emotion. "But your courage, it frees us both." No embrace, just the warmth of alliance, trust blooming like spring crocuses amid the ruins. Thorn's response struck harder still, a telegram to the club, retracting promised funds, branding Olivia a hysterical upstart. Danger swelled, but so did support. Petitions circulated, donors rallied. Each step forward provoked his fury, building the public scorn to a fever, the magnate unmasked as the true beggar of souls. As the clock struck 2, a final summons arrived, slipped under the townhouse door, an invitation to the Grand Assembly at the Metropolitan Opera House 3 nights hence. Thorn's doing, no doubt, a public stage for his counterstrike. Olivia folded it, heart racing. The decisive confrontation awaited, where truths would clash like cymbals in the gilded hall. The gas lamps of the Metropolitan Opera House blazed like a constellation fallen to earth, illuminating the throng of New York's elite spilling from carriages onto the crimson-carpeted steps. It was a balmy evening in late April, 1890, the air humming with the scent of lilacs and the low murmur of fortunes in motion. Olivia Whittaker descended from Ethan's brougham, her gloved hand light on his arm, her gown of deep emerald silk whispering against the marble. The fabric, chosen with care from a discreet modiste, hugged her figure with modest elegance. A high neckline adorned with lace, sleeves puffed just so, the cameo brooch gleaming at her throat like a badge of battles fought. No longer the seamstress in wool, but a woman stepping into the fray, her hazel eyes steady despite the flutter in her chest. Ethan, resplendent in black tails and a starched white shirt, his blue eyes scanning the crowd with quiet vigilance, squeezed her elbow gently. "Thorn's stage," he murmured, his voice a low rumble amid the orchestra's prelude, drifting from within. "But tonight we rewrite the script." Their alliance, forged in storm and separation, felt solid now. A partnership of equals, trust woven tighter than any corset lace. Yet tension coiled beneath. The invitation had arrived like a gauntlet, promising spectacle and sabotage. Inside, the grand foyer swirled with opulence. Crystal chandeliers dripping light onto ladies in jewel-toned satins and gentlemen with watch fobs glinting like medals. Conversations buzzed, stocks, scandals, the foundation's fate, while footmen circulated trays of champagne flutes. Olivia spotted familiar faces, Mrs. Hargrove, her brocade gown a fortress, whispering behind a fan, Mrs. Langford offering a nod of solidarity. Even Beatrice and Lydia, eyes wide with curiosity rather than contempt. The tide had shifted since her letter to the Times. Petitions circulated, donors wavered from Thorn's grasp. But the antagonist himself held court near the staircase, his pinstripe suit impeccable, moustache waxed to points, a circle of admirers hanging on his every word. "Miss Whittaker," Thorn drawled as they approached, his smile a serpent's curl. "How bold to show your face. The Assembly honors the Foundation's reformers, or should I say its unravelers." Laughter rippled from his sycophants, a bought banker and two social climbers. He raised his glass in mock toast. "To transparency, speaking of which." With theatrical flair, he produced a leather dossier, thicker than the last, snapping it open to reveal sheaves of papers and a sealed envelope. "Fresh evidence for the board's eyes. Your witness from the mission. She's recanted, under oath. And this letter, from your dear Aunt Clara, begging relief from debts you incurred, Miss Whittaker. A family in ruins, all for your ambitions." Gasps echoed through the foyer, heads turning like petals to the sun. The letter fluttered open, its script shaky, accusing Olivia of squandering mission funds on personal whims, forged, she knew, but damning in the lamplight. A murmur swelled. Scandalous, unfit for charity. Mrs. Hargrove's eyes narrowed, the old venom resurfacing. Thorn's final sabotage landed like a thunderbolt. His bought witness, a dockside actress in widow's weeds, stepping forward with a tearful nod. "She promised me silence for coin," the woman lied, voice quivering. The community teetered, reframing Olivia once more as the upstart, her moral choice laid bare, yield or fight. Olivia's pulse thundered, but she held Ethan's gaze, a silent anchor. No retreat. "Lies wrapped in ink," she said clearly, voice carrying over the hush. But truth cuts deeper. With deliberate calm, she drew from her reticule a slim portfolio, its contents prepared in midnight vigils. The diary pages, the portrait linking Thorn to her family's ruin, ledgers cross-referenced by a trusted accountant. Mr. Thorn didn't just embezzle orphans' stipends. He foreclosed on widows like my mother, twisted debts into graves. She held up the faded image, her voice steady as steel. "Proves it. And your witness paid $20 last week, as my messenger confirmed." The foyer froze. Ethan stepped forward, his presence commanding. "The board's vote is tonight, here, among witnesses. Thorn's schemes end." He signalled discreetly. From the crowd emerged Mrs. Langford, clutching a sworn deposition from a former Thorn clerk, remorseful, detailing the forgeries, the bribes. "He burned records in his office hearth," she testified, voice ringing. "I saw the Whittaker letters forged myself." Cheers erupted, scattered at first, then swelling as donors nodded. The banker peeling away from Thorn's side, petitions rustled, applause built like a crescendo. Thorn paled, mustache drooping, his dossier snatched by a board member for scrutiny. "Preposterous!" he sputtered, but the tide crashed against him. Mrs. Hargrove approached, fan lowered. "You've deceived us all, Reginald. The foundation lives, under proper eyes." The community reframed Olivia in a rush, from humiliated outsider to respected guardian, her compassion vindicated. Whispers turned to praise. Brave soul. True reformer. The peak of euphoria crested, victory resounding, Thorn's humiliation public as he slunk toward the exit, empire crumbling under the chandelier's glare. The assembly dissolved into toasts, the orchestra striking up a triumphant waltz. Olivia and Ethan slipped to a quiet alcove, the din fading. His hand found hers in the shadows, a tacit commitment in the clasp. No words needed, just the warmth of futures entwined. "We did it," he whispered, blue eyes soft. Silence settled, a balm after the storm, their bond sealed in the opera's glow. If this thrilling triumph has you cheering for Olivia and Ethan, subscribe to the channel right now, so you don't miss any other exciting stories from the Gilded Age. Yet as the night deepened, a final shadow lingered, a whispered rumor of Thorn's desperate counter, hinting at one last desperate play before dawn broke. The morning after the opera dawned clear and golden over New York, 1890, the Hudson River sparkling like a promise fulfilled. Olivia Whittaker stood at the window of the Gramercy Park townhouse, the emerald gown from the night before draped over a chair, its lace still whispering of triumph. Sleep had come in fits, her mind replaying the foyer's chaos, the gasps, the applause, Thorn's retreat into the shadows. Ethan had seen her home, his carriage lingering until the lamps dimmed, but propriety held them at the door, a shared glance, heavy with unspoken vows, before he vanished into the night. By noon, the city buzzed with the scandal's aftershocks. The Times splashed the story across its front page. Thorn unmasked. Embezzler's empire crumbles at opera gala. Olivia scanned the headlines over coffee, Mrs. Ellis beaming as she served fresh scones. "Justice served, miss. The streets are singing it." Indeed, messengers arrived in droves. Notes from donors recommitting funds, invitations to reform committees, even a telegram from Aunt Clara. "Proud of you, child. Farm's safe now. Thorn's loans called off." The legal threads unraveled swiftly. Ethan's attorneys, sharp as switchblades, descended on Thorn's offices that afternoon. Foreclosure papers flew, his waterfront holdings seized under embezzlement charges. Witnesses tumbled forward, a parade of clerks and widows, their testimonies stacking like bricks in a wall. By evening, Thorn faced arraignment. Loss of board seats, exile to a dingy Philadelphia flat, his prestige shattered like fine china under boot. No prison bars for him yet. The Gilded Age favored quiet ruin, but his name became poison, whispered in clubs as a cautionary tale. "Fallen far," Ethan remarked later, joining Olivia in the parlor, his frock coat unbuttoned for the first time, revealing a vulnerability in his posture. She poured sherry, their hands brushing, a ritual now, free of Storm's desperation. "He paid for it all," she said softly, hazel eyes meeting his blue. "My family's ghost laid to rest." Transformation gleamed in her voice, no longer the hesitant seamstress, but a leader with compassion honed to steel. Ethan nodded, setting his glass down. "And you've changed everything. The foundation's yours to shape." They walked to the mission hall that week, the air warming with May's breath, horse chestnuts blooming in pink cascades. The old wooden beams, sagging under holly scars from Christmas, now hosted builders. Ethan's cruise, directed by Olivia's vision. No grand palace, but a legacy etched in brick. An orphanage wing with sunlit classrooms, a library stocked with leather-bound tales for hollow-cheeked children. Sewing rooms, where girls like her once were, could learn trades without the grind of tenements. A school for the forgotten, Olivia declared, pinning a cornerstone plaque, in memory of lost lights rebuilt by kindness. Workers cheered, Mrs. Langford among them, her reticule fat with pledged silks for the curriculum. Coadjuvants found their places too. The Hargrove widow, humbled by the scandal's mirror, sent a carriage of apologies and a position on the auxiliary board. Beatrice and Lydia, eyes opened, volunteered at the new wing, their giggles echoing in the halls. Fiona the cook baked pies for the opening, her Irish lilt praising Olivia's rise. Even neutral figures shifted. The banker from the tea now funneled investments, repositioned from skeptic to supporter. Their bond sealed not in spectacle, but choice. One quiet evening in the townhouse garden, under lantern glow and the scent of lilacs, Ethan knelt, not with fanfare but simplicity. From his pocket came a gold band, plain and unadorned, forged fresh in a Fifth Avenue jeweler's fire. No heirlooms tainted by loss. "Olivia," he said, voice rough with emotion, "will you build this life with me, as equals, no disguises?" She slipped it on, the metal warm against her skin, and drew him up. Their lips met then, a kiss born of love, soft and certain, sealing futures without the weight of pasts. No grand horizon yet, but one glimpsed, children's laughter in the orphanage, rails extending west under fair trade. The new equilibrium settled like dusk over the city. Olivia led the foundation with quiet authority, her days filled with petitions and playrooms, evenings shared with Ethan, walks in the park, debates over ledgers by firelight. He shed some shadows, his disguises traded for open philanthropy. The magnate softened by her light. Aunt Clara visited come summer, her farm thriving on cleared debts, cousins wide-eyed at the townhouse's polish. Yet as autumn leaves turned, a soft echo lingered. A letter arrived one crisp morning, postmarked from Chicago. An invitation to expand the model westward, signed by a railroad ally. Ethan read it aloud, his arm around Olivia's waist. "Another chapter?" he mused, blue eyes twinkling. She smiled, the band glinting. The horizon stretched, full of promise, their legacy just beginning to unfold. 10 years had woven their gentle tapestry over New York City by the autumn of 1899, transforming the raw edges of the Gilded Age into a patina of progress and memory. The skyline had stretched taller, with steel skeletons rising where horse-drawn omnibuses once clattered, but Gramercy Park remained a verdant oasis, its iron fences guarding secrets like a faithful sentinel. Olivia Caldwell, once Whitaker, stood on the wide porch of the townhouse that had become her anchor, her auburn hair now threaded with silver, pinned loosely beneath a wide-brimmed hat of straw and silk. At 34, she carried the years with grace, her hazel eyes softened by laughter lines, the cameo brooch still pinned at her lace collar, a constant companion through triumphs and quiet trials. The garden bloomed riotous around her, roses climbing trellises in crimson cascades, a far cry from the barren square of her early days here. Ethan approached from the side path, his broad shoulders unbowed by time, though the blue eyes that had pierced her on that Christmas Eve now held a deeper wisdom, etched by boardroom battles and family joys. His beard, once shadowed with disguise, was neatly trimmed, and his frock coat hung open over a vest that spoke of comfort rather than command. He carried a wooden box, its lid carved with the eagle crest of his rails, now a symbol shared between them. "Look what the post brought from Chicago," he said, his voice warm as hearth embers, handing her the box. Inside lay blueprints, expansions for the Foundation's western outposts, schools and orphanages sprouting along the rail lines like wildflowers after rain. Olivia traced the lines with a finger, her wedding band catching the sun. "Our legacy grows," she murmured, a nostalgic ache blooming in her chest. 10 years since the opera's storm, and the Foundation thrived, no longer a fragile trust, but a network of havens from Manhattan tenements to prairie towns, teaching trades, mending hearts, all under her steady hand. Their love had endured, not as a fairy tale blaze, but a steady flame tempered by life's forge. Marriage had come that summer after the gala. In a simple ceremony at the mission hall, vows exchanged amid children's choirs and the scent of fresh pine. No grand cathedral for them, just the wooden beams that witnessed their first meeting, Aunt Clara beaming from the front pew, her farm long since prospered on cleared debts and Olivia's quiet endowments. Ethan had vowed then, "No more masks between us," and he kept it. Shedding the wanderer's guise for a partnership of equals, they built a life here, in this house expanded with nurseries and studies, where evenings unfolded over shared ledgers and whispered dreams. 2 children blessed their union, young Clara, 8 now, with her mother's freckles and a mop of auburn curls, chasing fireflies in the garden with unbridled joy, and Benjamin, 5, inheriting Ethan's piercing gaze and a curiosity that led him to dismantle toy trains, only to rebuild them stronger. "Papa's rails, but with kindness," he declared one twilight, stacking blocks into a model orphanage. Olivia watched them from the porch swing, Ethan's arm around her shoulders, the weight of it familiar and profound. The children knew fragments of the old tales, the beggar uncle who turned prince, the villain who fled to obscurity. But not the shadows, only the light. Changes rippled through their circle like echoes in a grand hall. Aunt Clara had passed 3 winters past, peaceful in her countryside bed, surrounded by grandchildren and letters from the Foundation's wards, many risen to seamstresses, clerks, even teachers, their gratitude a balm on her final days. Mrs. Langford led the auxiliary now, her once hesitant voice a clarion for reforms, widowed no more in spirit. The Hargroves? Beatrice wed a reform-minded publisher, channeling her old frivolity into pamphlets on labor rights. Lydia taught piano at the mission, her tinkling notes a bridge to the girls Olivia once was. Even Fiona, the stout cook, retired to Ireland with a pension from the household funds, her letters full of grandbabies and green hills. Thorn paid dearly for his greed. Exiled to a Philadelphia boarding house after the trials, embezzlement convictions stripping his holdings, he faded into whispers, a cautionary ghost haunting Wall Street clubs. Last word came via a distant cousin, broken, alone, his moustache unkempt, begging favors from those he once scorned. No sympathy stirred in Olivia. Justice had a quiet finality, like autumn leaves settling. Yet nostalgia tugged strongest in these golden hours. Ethan drew her close, his breath stirring her hair. "Remember that blizzard night? Confessions by firelight?" He trailed off, blue eyes distant. Olivia smiled, leaning into him. "And the storm that followed. We weathered it all." The children called from the garden, "Mama! Papa! Come see the fort!" Their laughter pulling them forward. As they joined the play, hands linked, Olivia glanced back at the townhouse. The brooch gleamed, the eagle box waited on the rail. Their story, once a whirlwind of deception and defiance, had rooted deep. Love resilient, family woven tight, legacy blooming eternal. In the Gilded Age's fading gleam, they had forged something timeless, hearts mended, futures bright. As the leaves turned to gold in Central Park that crisp autumn of 1899, Olivia Caldwell paused on the garden path. her hand resting lightly on the wrought iron gate that separated their world from the bustling streets beyond. The townhouse behind her stood as a testament to 10 years of quiet victories, its brick facade warmed by climbing ivy, windows aglow with the soft light of family evenings. Ethan emerged from the side door, their children trailing him like eager shadows. Clara with her sketchbook clutched tight, Benjamin waving a wooden train car he'd carved himself. "Mama, look what Papa helped me build," the boy called, his voice bright as the falling sunlight. Olivia turned, her smile deepening the lines around her eyes, and knelt to admire the toy. "It's a wonder, Ben, just like the rails that connect us all." Ethan caught her gaze over the children's heads, a silent understanding passing between them, the kind forged in blizzards and boardrooms, in deceptions unraveled and truths laid bare. Their love had not dimmed. If anything, time had polished it, turning raw passion into a steady partnership that weathered the Gilded Age's storms and emerged stronger, more profound. In the decade since that fateful Christmas Eve, New York had transformed around them, its skyline pushing ever upward with the audacity of progress. Yet the lessons of their journey lingered like the scent of chestnuts on a winter wind. True wealth lay not in the gleam of gold watch chains or the sprawl of railroad empires, but in the unassuming acts of kindness that bridged the chasms of class and circumstance. Olivia had learned that appearances deceived, Ethan's rags had hidden a magnate's heart, and her own modest station concealed a resilience that toppled villains. Justice, she knew now, was not a thunderclap from distant courts, but a persistent light, kindled by one person's refusal to bow to greed's shadow. Ethan joined her on the path, his arm slipping around her waist as the children dashed ahead to chase leaves. "Do you ever think back to that mission hall?" he asked softly, his breath warm against her ear. "The stew, the snow. You saw me when I was invisible." She leaned into him, the cameo brooch pressing cool against her collar. "And you saw me too, not the seamstress, but the woman who could change things. That's the real magic, Ethan. Not fortunes, but the courage to help a stranger and watch it ripple outward." Their legacy unfolded in the foundation's thriving branches. Orphanages, where girls learned to stitch dreams into reality, libraries stocked with stories that whispered of better tomorrows, and reform halls where widows like Mrs. Langford led the charge against the era's cruelties. Thorn's fall had been a stark reminder. Ambition, untethered by compassion, crumbled like autumn frost under the sun. He had paid the highest price, his exile a lonely echo in forgotten boarding houses, a man stripped of allies and illusions. But Olivia harbored no bitterness. Forgiveness, she'd discovered, was the ultimate freedom, allowing her to pour energy into building rather than breaking. Family had become their greatest reward. Clara, with her mother's fire, already volunteered at the mission, her small hands distributing bread with the same grace Olivia once had. Benjamin, inheriting Ethan's vision, sketched rail maps dotted with schools, dreaming of lines that carried hope as much as cargo. Aunt Clara's spirit lived in their laughter, her farm now a bustling homestead passed to cousins who thrived under the foundation's aid. Even the Hargroves had evolved. Beatrice's pamphlets stirred social waves, Lydia's music lessons a melody of redemption. The city, once divided by invisible walls, softened at the edges, its people learning that unity mended what division tore. As dusk painted the sky in hues of rose and indigo, the family gathered on the porch swing, the creak of chains a lullaby against the distant hum of the metropolis. Olivia watched Ethan read to the children, his voice weaving tales of far-off adventures, and felt a swell of gratitude. Their story, a beggar's disguise, a seamstress's heart, a villain's unmasking, taught that destiny favored the bold and the kind. In a world obsessed with glittering facades, it was the quiet heroes who reshaped horizons, proving that one act of compassion could ignite a lifetime of light. What did this tale of hidden depths and triumphant hearts stir in you? Drop a comment below sharing your favorite moment. Did Olivia's courage inspire you, or Ethan's confession touch your soul? And if you made it to the end, write Magnate in the comments to let me know you uncovered the secret. It helps spread these stories to more dreamers like you. For more gripping Gilded Age adventures filled with romance, intrigue, and redemption, check out the cards for similar narratives waiting just for you. Until next time, remember, kindness is the true fortune that never fades.